Welcome to day 4 of the Eating Awareness Challenge. I'm Michael Espinosa, your healthy living architect, here to bring you day 4. And today's habit is eat 1 to 2 cupped handfuls of starchy carbs. Level 1 would be at 1 meal. Level 2, eat 1 to 2 cupped handfuls of starchy carbs at all your meals today. And then level 3 is going to be eat 1 to 2 cupped handfuls of starchy carbs at all your meals today with 1 to 2 fists of veggies and 1 to 2 palms of protein eaten slowly. So the habits are starting to stack up quickly. Some of you are going to take this information from the 5 Habits Challenge and totally run with it. Others of you, however, I know are struggling and you're running up against other challenges like time management, like food prep, and you may even be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I want to tell you, don't worry. We're going to cover all of this information in the full program once this challenge is over. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. I want to talk to you and remind you about 3 things that you need to do to win in this challenge. So when you go to the group in the Facebook group, you go to Files section, or I'm sorry, you go to Units. You're going to see everything organized in the units. Right now in the units, you're going to see Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4 for this challenge, and then you'll see some other units for some challenges that we've run in the past. So everything is organized, really simple to kind of follow. So if you're kind of late to the challenge and you want to get back, kind of review what we've done, all of that information is there for you. So, okay. I also, before we move forward, I want to thank everybody who has participated in the challenge so far. By being here for the Facebook Lives, I know Matthew's watching now, and I've loved seeing you here. I love it when people are asking questions and giving me feedback in the daily posts. People like Brooke, Esha, Katie, Daisy, you guys are really killing it, and I just wanted to give you all a shout out. And I know there's a couple of people that I missed who have been consistent. So thank you for participating, because this is all for you. So that being said, let's get into the subject of the day: carbohydrates. The habit is to eat 1 to 2 cupped handfuls of starchy carbs. So what are carbs? Well, carbohydrates are classified typically according to the structure, and structurally speaking, you have simple carbs and you have complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are smaller and easily processed. Those are mono and disaccharides. Complex carbs are called polysaccharides because they have more than 2 sugar groups linked together. So you might have di, tri, and beyond. They'll just be the simple sugars kind of linked up. So put simply, the structure of the carb and the source of the carb is going to affect things like how quickly and or easily the carbohydrate molecule is digested and absorbed. So a simple carb is going to be more easily digested than a complex carb. What other nutrients are provided along with the carbohydrate source? For instance, if there's fat and protein, that will slow down digestion and or the absorption of the carbohydrate. Our perceptions of the carbohydrates' texture and sweetness, and enzyme action in the mouth and gut. So all of those things are affected by the structure and the source of the carbohydrates. All carbohydrates, regardless of how they start off in your mouth, get broken down into simple sugars in the body. So the thing is that the healthier, quote unquote, healthier carbs are digested and absorbed slower, while the non-healthy carbs, quote unquote, non-healthy carbs, are digested very quickly. So once they're broken down and absorbed, the sugars go to the liver to fill energy stores and to the muscles, and after that they enter the bloodstream and venture out into other cells in the body, and that's when insulin is released to handle the sugar load. So if it's a quick gush of sugar into the body, there's going to be a quick gush of insulin, and that over a lifetime can lead to issues like diabetes. So when we have a mixed intake like we're calling for with the 5 habits, it's going to slow the absorption of the sugar into the body so that you don't get this huge dump. And if you're eating whole food starchy carbs along with protein, veggies, which is going to have fiber, which is going to slow down the carbohydrates and fat, that's going to slow down the absorption or the dumping of sugar into the cells, into the bloodstream. So when the diet consists of simple sugars and refined carbohydrates, you might notice elevated triglyceride levels, bad cholesterol, and then eventually insulin resistance, which will lead to diabetes eventually. And carbohydrates that are digested slower, such as whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, can control insulin and energy levels and body composition. So we really want to think about getting more of the complex carbohydrates, the whole food starchy carbohydrates, over processed carbohydrates. I want you to think about that in the action guide and in the post. What are some processed carbohydrates that you're eating right now, and how can you eat more of whole food starchy carbs, minimally processed starchy carbs, to take the place of some of those more processed carbs that you have in your diet. So quick examples of that: crackers. Okay, let's say you like cheese and crackers. Maybe you can do apples and cheese. If you want to switch, maybe you're having, you like to have a chicken breast sandwich. Maybe you can trade out some of that bread for veggies and some fruit. So just some ideas off the top of my head. So we're talking about carbs, and carbs are loaded, pun intended, with misconceptions. People have ideas about carbs. Carbs are kind of like the villain of the day in the food world. This is not new. Everything is cyclical, and we're kind of in this cycle now of carbs being the bad guy. Ask anybody who wants to lose weight, and they're going to tell you that they need to cut back on carbs. And and I know in the last few years, I bet you've heard it or thought of at least one of the following things. Carbs spike your blood sugar and insulin, which slathers fat on the body, since insulin is a storage hormone. That carbs, especially sugars and grains, cause inflammation. Or maybe you've heard that carbs are not an essential part of the diet, like fat and protein, so we don't need carbs to live life optimally. So let me just give you my answer to some of these misconceptions, like right off the bat, and then we'll go into a little bit of a few of them as we progress through the Facebook Live. So, do carbs increase insulin levels? Well, yes, they do, but insulin, you bad monkey, insulin, you super naughty monkey hormone. Insulin is also good and for a lot of reasons. It's a satiety hormone. So if you're secreting insulin, you're going to feel more satisfied with your food. And it is a storage hormone, but we store materials in a lot of different ways. We store fat, but we also store muscle. So it's important for muscle growth as well. And when we have carbs with a balanced intake with protein, veggies, fiber, fat, we're not going to get that insulin, that spike of insulin that everybody's super afraid of getting now. So does it increase insulin levels? Yes. Will that lead to fat gain? No, it won't. Are carbs inflammatory? Well, if you're eating donuts and Matthew commented earlier, pizza and French fries all the time, which are also loaded with fat, then yeah, it's probably going to be inflammatory. Are they inflammatory if you're having whole food starchy carbs like grains or roots and tubers? Again, not really. The science really doesn't back that up 100%. maybe you've heard of a paper here and there, but when we start to take a look at the big picture of nutrition and start to look at these elements along with other foods that we're taking in and thinking about the synergy of the food, then that carbs lead to inflammation just doesn't hold up weight. Are carbs less important than protein, fat, and many of the micronutrients that contribute to our health? Carbs are super important. And it's going to depend on your unique needs as important, but they're not like some throwaway macronutrient that you don't need. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. Carb reduction, to get to the point, carb reduction can cost us. Most of us require some level of carbohydrates to function best over the long run. We can cut carbs temporarily. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if we need to lose weight quickly. But for most of us, 99% of us, give or take, I don't know, I threw that number out there, but most of us, a lot of us, 90% of us, keeping carbs too low for too long can have disastrous consequences, especially for those of us who work out. And a lot of us are working out and we're interested in an active lifestyle. If you're sedentary, you could probably get away with eating less carbs. But if you like to exercise regularly and enthusiastically like I do, restricting your carb intake too drastically can lead to a lot of like crappy outcomes, like a decreased thyroid output, increased stress hormones, decreased testosterone, impaired mood and cognitive function, foggy mind, shitty mood all the time, muscle catabolism, suppressed immune function. In other words, your metabolism might slow down, your stress hormones go up, your muscle building hormones go down, you feel lousy, spaced out, groggy, sluggish, cranky, maybe even sick. And you know what? The most vexing thing of all of this is that you probably don't even lose that much weight in the long term. Because low carbs are not better for fat loss, and the research in this bears it out. In the short term, look, many people who have tried low-carb dieting are initially pleased by immediate weight loss. But most of that weight loss comes in the form of water and glycogen. Glycogen is the carb source that your body stores in the muscles and in the liver. And when you go low carb for a long time, the body starts to use those glycogen stores. And then once those stores are depleted, then that precipitous drop in weight that we witness at the beginning of these carb diets start to level off, and a more balanced intake starts to catch up with these low carb diets in terms of effectiveness and fat loss. And in the long term, a higher carb with a calorie deficit with a higher carb intake and a high protein intake is actually going to be better in the long term, because you're not going to be fucking psycho from going low carb. And trust me, I've been there. It sucks. Don't do it if you can avoid it, unless you want to do some extreme shit like I do. Put simply, the long-term evidence doesn't support low carb dieting, or the research says that in the long term, low carb dieting isn't any better than a higher intake of carbohydrates if the protein is high as well. So all of this to say that strict diets aren't the answer, especially if you're on a long path and you're worried about and you're really concerned with sustainability, like making this lifestyle sustainable. Like I said before, this is not a weight loss challenge. This is kind of like building your base challenge, like living a healthier life and picking up these habits and making a commitment to them for the long term. I've gone on my low carb diets and with success, but they're always in the short term. And the way that the things that I'm sharing with you here is what I practice. 90% of the time, 95% of the time. I spent 2 years, 54 weeks doing this to build muscle, to stay lean, and to fuel my performance. More restriction almost never works. Don't take your nutrition to extremes unless you have extreme goals. Strategic moderation, as unsexy as it sounds, is the only sustainable method. So you're unique, your body is unique, and you will require a unique carb intake, and that's going to depend on your goals. Do you want to lose fat, gain muscle, or do you want to maintain where you're at? It's going to depend on your genetics, different body types, medical conditions. People are going to respond differently. Sometimes low carb does work for some people. It does work for some athletes. But for the most part, most people are going to need a balanced intake. It's also going to depend on the carb source. We talked about refined versus minimally processed carbs, and then your carb intake is going to depend on your activity level. Are you sedentary? Do you weight train? Are you an endurance athlete? Endurance athlete might require a much higher carb intake. Of course, there are those outliers. There are those people who do better with the low carb, but that's more the exception than the rule. So here's what does work for losing weight or maintenance or muscle building in the long term. The approach that I'm sharing with you in this challenge. Control your portions consistently with a balanced intake of proteins, veggies, whole food starchy carbs, and fats eaten slowly in moderation to 80% full. Unless you want to gain weight, if that's the case, eat fast. If you want to gain weight, eat fast. So some quick ideas for getting more carbs, and these are universal, really. We've talked a little bit about some of these ideas already. Stock up on easy to grab options. For every habit, every of the food habits, you should have some easy to grab options on your shopping list. And again, that shopping list is available in the file section in the group. So things like sweet fruits, berries, apples, bananas, oranges, buy them, put them on your list, buy them, put them in conspicuous places in the house, like a bowl of fruit by the door, a bowl of fruit on the dining room table. The fruits and vegetables habit and the carb habit kind of, most of the time I'm trying to eat as much colorful, unsweet veggies as I can, or more bitter veggies as I can for that veggie habit. And sometimes I'll include fruit as that, depending on if it's like an unsweet fruit or if it's like berries or watermelon, but it's really up to you. I personally think that if you're counting fruit as your carb source, then that is kind of like a dialed down carb because it's going to be high fiber and less nutrient dense and less calorie dense than a starchy carb source. So starchy carb source is going to be more calorie dense. It's up to you how you want to include it, but you still have to get those vegetables in. Don't count your fruit as your veggie all the time, 100% of the time. I think the recommended intake is like 2/3 vegetables, 1/3 fruit. When you're kind of taking a look at all of this. So stock up on easy to grab options. Make a super shake. I'm going to drop that super shake guide in the files right after this Facebook Live, so you guys have that if any of you are interested in that super shake. And the super shake, again, is some liquid with some protein, habit number 2, with some veggies, habit number 3, with some starchy carbs for sweetness like banana, dates, and fats, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. Cupped handful of, or a little small handful of walnuts or some peanut butter in a super shake. If you're in a hurry, you're busy, you still don't have an excuse, you can follow the 5 habits, no problem, making yourself a super shake. And like I said, I'm going to drop that into the file section. More resources for you guys to kick ass. Again, the free day food prep ritual. When you're prepping your food, think about the 5 habits. Think about the protein you need to prep, the veggies that you might need to prep, and the carbs that you might need to prep. So when you're prepping everything, keep those things in mind so that you can maximize your time. Time is like this universal thing that everybody has so little of. And of course, you can't add hours to the day. And we say make time, you carving out time. But I just want to stress that when you think ahead, when you plan ahead a little bit, it's going to save you time. Time, you have to eat. You have to eat. A little bit of planning ahead, a little bit of savvy, practicing some of these techniques is gonna save you time. It's gonna help you. It's not gonna hinder you. It's not another thing that you need to do. You're already eating. Be savvy, be smart about it. Plan ahead a little bit. A little bit of planning goes a super long way. And how we're doing this in this challenge, get on that shopping list, buy those veggies, and then check off, go down the list. Did I get my protein today? Did I get my veggies? Did I get my whole food starchy carbs? And then finally, the breakfast, lunch, or dinner prep ritual. If you're prepping dinner, prep a big pot of rice, or a big pot of roots stew, malanga, yuca, boniato, sweet potato. Put them all in there. Bring it to a boil, and now you have a big pot to grab from. That breakfast, lunch, or dinner prep ritual is crucial. Also, I forgot to mention beans. Beans are, especially if you're not vegetarian. If you're vegetarian, you're going to be counting those beans towards your protein intake. But if you are an omnivore and you're having flesh with your meal, beans are delicious for most people. Some people, I don't know. I think they're delicious. Beans are delicious. They're really, really good for you, and they're packed with fiber and amazing complex carbs. So don't forget your friends, your little friends, the lentils, the legumes, red beans, black beans, pinto beans, garbanzo beans, navy beans, spotted beans, Jacob beans, and everything in between the bean. Because the beans are good for your heart. The more you eat, the more you fart. The more you fart, the better you feel. So eat some beans with every meal. Some of you are going to take this challenge and totally run with it. You're going to print out this scorecard 1,000,000 times. You're going to put it on your fridge. You're not going to think about it anymore. You're going to go to a restaurant. You're going to look at the menu, and you're going to be like asking the waiter, like, hey, I got to get my protein, I got to get my veggies, and I got to get my carbs and my healthy fats. I don't see vegetables here. I need veggies. I need this much. And then you're going to make it run. You're going to be prepping food and all of that. Some of you are going to take this and run with it. However, I know some of you are going to struggle, and you're struggling already. You're looking at these habits stacking up, and you're wondering, how the hell am I going to do it? I'm so busy. I got the kids. I got work. I'm running around. I don't have any time. And maybe you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Don't worry. Once this challenge is over, we're going to cover all of this information and much more in the full program. So if you are worried about that, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to continue this discussion in the Facebook group. If you guys have any questions about carbohydrates, about mixed intake, and how you can meet your goals using the 5 habits, hit me up in the Facebook group, hit me up in the post. And I also want to know, what are the processed carbs that are in your diet now, that are staples in your diet? And what are some minimally processed foods that you love? And how can you start to stock up on and eat more of those processed whole foods, those unprocessed or minimally processed whole food starchy carbs, so that you can eat less of the processed carbs that you love. And finally, I want to say, about that, because we're talking about carbs, we're talking a little bit about restriction, and I think Matt brought up, kind of jokingly, and Jess said, well, is it a problem if pizza and French fries are my favorite carbohydrates? And my response was, only if you cannot enjoy those things in moderation. So in the last challenge that we did, we talked about the Healthy Kitchen Challenge, and we talked about surrounding yourself with foods that are conducive to your goals, that are in line with your goals, your values, and your priorities, your principles as a human being, and what you want to accomplish. I said those things are only a problem only if you cannot enjoy those things in moderation. So some of us have a really hard time enjoying those things in moderation. Food is addictive. There's an addictive quality to food. And so, I talked about this 12-step process, right? Like the 12 steps. We talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. They have these steps for dealing with addiction. And, some of us can be working through some of that, some food addiction issues. So, consider, all I'll say to that is, you don't have to go to Pizza Eaters Anonymous just yet, but just think about it in terms of surround yourself with food that's going to help you reach your goals. And that's what that shopping list is so important. That's why thinking about eating more of something is more helpful than thinking about what to avoid. I want you to enjoy the pizza. I want you to enjoy the French fries. I want you to enjoy those foods slowly. I want you to really savor them. And I want you to do that while you are also being consistent 90% of the time or more with the 5 habits that we're going through, that we're going over in this challenge. Just because you eat French fries and pizza in moderation isn't going to totally destroy your or derail you. In fact, I think those things are important. It's important to enjoy the foods we love, and there are no bad foods. Remember, we can always fall back on those anchor habits. That's why habit number 1 is to eat slowly and to maximize your pleasure and your time with those foods. Eating quickly, then now we're losing awareness and we're on autopilot, and we just don't enjoy those foods as much. And then maybe we yawn down that pint of ice cream, and what we're trying to do is fill a hole that with this ice cream that the ice cream cannot fill. So eating slowly may help to build awareness around that. And also, get us to think about why we're wanting to like just pizza, French fries, ice cream. What are you trying to, what hole are you trying to fill with that? And it's, I don't know, let's have that discussion in the Facebook group. Hit me up, give me a personal message. Yeah, because it's so good, and it is so good. It is so good. So I'm here for you. So if you want to talk about that, either privately or in the group, which I would prefer because I feel like a lot of us struggle with these things, then I invite you to chime in and let me know how you're feeling about it. So let's continue in the Facebook group. This is day 4. I wish you all luck. Again, this is Michael Espinosa, founder and head coach at the Arc Fitness. Your healthy living architect, reminding you to live 1% better every single day. I'll see y'all in the group later.